Good morning to you all. It is really a gift to be invited to preach here to your congregation because I do feel a connection with this community that some of you may not know about. You might know that Reverend Greg Pelly and I have a particular kind of bond, which is that Greg served my congregation during his ministerial internship. He interned at Wellsprings before I was there, and even though he was there before my time, we have that unique bond of having known and cared for some of the same longtime members of that community. And he is such a precious colleague to me, so by extension, you all are precious to me as well as his current congregation. So truly thank you for inviting me to be here. At Wellsprings, in my congregation this year, we returned to in-person worship in the fall. And then we left again in the winter, thank you Omicron, right? And then we came back again. And since we have been together in body and virtually, we have started talking a lot about the big themes and questions that these past 2 years have brought up for us. What does it mean to process, to integrate all that we have been through over these past 2 years? The pandemic, the politics, the isolation, the uprisings by people who need to be heard, the backlash by so many who are afraid. We've talked about grief and we've talked about reconnection. We talked about the Great Resignation, which you might have read some news articles about. Maybe some of you are part of that, people making big changes. We've talked about how we individually change in times of change, how that's normal. And we've also talked about joy. We did a whole series last winter about joy. And gosh, joy runs the risk of sounding like a little bit of a pie-in-the-sky sermon topic these days, doesn't it? Maybe a little out of touch. But I think joy fits quite well as a focus point for us as Unitarian Universalists in difficult times. Because Unitarian Universalists believe that we must all work together if we want to find salvation. Salvation from the very real evils and problems in this world. It does not come from outside of us as human beings, at least not entirely. It depends on you and me and our cooperation. And if we are going to keep going with this work, then we need fuel. We need good night's sleeps, and we need good meals, and we need community and music to keep us going. Just like ministers take sabbaticals, just like many of us take retirement late in life, or hopefully time off for vacation, weekends, Sabbath breaks to refuel. We all need that energy of joy to give us life when the world surrounds us too often with so much death. Our joy need not be disengaged or irresponsible. It can and it must live right alongside the difficulty. After these past 2 years, after all that we have been through recently, I feel like we are craving joy. We long for a little uncomplicated joy, please, right? That doesn't have an asterisk or a footnote or a, well, it's not exactly the way I want it, but next to it. We long for joy that doesn't require sanitizing after use, joy that doesn't have to worry that the things we treasure, our connections, could harm us. We are especially longing these days for simple and uncomplicated joys. Some of us may fear that we have lost that, which is where the grace of the world comes in, right alongside the pain. The words of Mary Oliver from our reading this morning, reminding us that in so many places, wild geese, literal and figurative, are calling to us from overhead, announcing our place in the family of things. Even if we are not necessarily finding joy in all of the same old places, The good news is joy still spreads like seeds or pollen. Joy wants to live, and it can be carried to us on the air, and it will find small places like a seed where we make space for it to grow. I'll give you an example. It's not an example from my own life, but it is from someone I know, so I am changing names to protect their privacy. But there's a friend of mine who writes these long updates every now and then about her young daughter on Facebook. My friend, to put it mildly, has not had an easy last few years. She has dealt with many of the same stress that families with young children have all been through, and then some more. But I want to read you this update she wrote about her little girl from a couple months ago. She said, "You know, 3 years old is such a good age. I can hardly believe it. At 37 months, we can devour mountains of picture books together, with Riley exclaiming in enthusiasm when, say, the characters decide to weave their spools of thread into a multicolored cloth. She will say out loud to no one in particular, 'That's a great idea.' Assembling a marble run is cause for her for jumping up and down levels of glee. We can have conversations now. Riley tells me that she's sad that the sun is missing. She does not want winter or snow. When she comes home from preschool, she reports that her friend scratched her, but then said she was sorry, and that made it feel better. She makes me something called candy pies. She insists on picking out her own clothes, puts them on, and then looks at herself and says, 'They aren't cute for me enough,' and picks out different clothes. She's enthusiastic about ice cream and pasta and oranges, white yogurt, bananas, and chocolate. She tends to pick a food and want tons of it for each meal, and then want a completely different food for the next meal, which is how a few days ago she had 5 oranges for dinner. Riley spontaneously bursts into song. She sings things all the way through. She continues to insist that sharks are too scary. She loves to keep her mask on her ears and button her coat up all the way. She loves to go to the drugstore to buy batteries, but after 2 blocks, she tells me there are too many steps and she needs to be carried. She still thinks the verb for lugging a toddler in one's arms is carry you, as in, "Mommy, will you carry you me?" She still calls herself a baby, but she knows her name is Riley, too. Her skin is gold, she says. She is particular about the numbers of buses and likes to point out the numbers on the bus stops because she knows them now, even the bus stops that are actually 1-hour parking signs. There is still no one bus. "I don't know," my friend says. "I don't have a big proclamation or even a point to make. She's just pretty great. She's just pretty great, and I love her." This is why my friend's note caught my eye. Nothing particular, no big proclamation. Just paragraph upon paragraph of noticing and attention and love. I would guess that we all have someone or something that we love that much. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a place. Maybe it's a place that we feel at home, that we know by heart, where we noticed every small detail when it changed. Maybe it's a beloved pet that we love, a piece of artwork, a song that we could listen to forever, that we know backwards and forwards. And that love that we feel brings us joy. Now, joy may not be the only thing that love brings. Love can hold so much complexity. It's the good and happy stuff, and it's also much more than that. That's why love is so powerful. It holds the full complexity of our circumstances. It holds the sadness of the friend who scratches us and the fear of the disappearing sun. But when we approach the world still with that deep love and care, those circumstances can still be alongside the joy. They can't take the joy away entirely. Because when we love with close attention, when we allow ourselves the time and the space to take delight in whatever it is that we love, we are actually cultivating that joy. We grow more joy. We feed it and we water it when we do that, and it takes up more and more of that space alongside the tough things. I think that we are really trained, unfortunately, to worry a lot in our society about whether we are loved. Advertisers, achievement culture, capitalism, call it whatever you will, we are constantly trained to assess how we stack up, where we measure up. Are we doing well enough to be worthy, to be loved? But we are not nearly as well trained in this society to love others well, to love the world well. And that's a shame, because loving the world around us, loving other people, is not just good for them. When we are more loving, the process of loving is a joy creator for us as well. The way my friend loves her daughter clearly brings her such great joy. And whatever it is for you, you can tap into that same ability to cultivate joy anytime you allow yourself, as Mary Oliver said, to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. There's a book that I got for Christmas last year. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's called On Looking: 11 Walks Through Expert Eyes. It's by a woman named Alexandra Horowitz. And the book has a pretty simple premise. In each chapter, Alexandra takes a walk around her neighborhood. She lives in the city, so she's taking a walk around a single city block in her town. The first walk in this book she takes on her own. And she writes about all of the things that she notices on her city block, the places that she frequents, her own home, all of the things that are so familiar to her. But after that first walk, in each chapter that follows, she invites a different expert to join her. 10 different companions to take that very same walk, all of whom are experts in a particular field. And so chapter after chapter, she shares the experience of walking with those people. So after taking that walk by herself in the next chapter, she takes that same walk with an expert in typography. And this expert turns her block into a museum of fonts, of lettering. He talks about all the different kinds of lettering on the signs around her, the same ones that she sees every day. But because of his love and attention for the subject, he can tell her what he sees about the history of this block, just from the fonts that are used. What styles of type were popular when, what it might say about the shop owner or how long the business has been there. In another chapter, she walks the same block with an entomologist, a bug scientist, who points out tiny little signs of life that she had never, ever thought to look for or notice in her urban ecosystem. There's another chapter where she walks with a sound engineer who talks about what he hears in different spots. She walks with a geologist who notices that there are, in fact, rocks all around her that were not concrete poured by the city. She walks with a city planner. I mean, to me, it just sounds like a delightful celebration of being a nerd, right? Of just being a nerd for something, to love some small thing completely and unabashedly and learn all you can about it. People who like birds see cool birds everywhere. People who love old architecture notice the magical old architecture around them. Do we know what we love that much? Do we know? Do you know what you're a nerd for? It doesn't have to be a formal subject. Maybe you love to find the best ice cream place in every town that you visit. Maybe you collect tiny chicken statues, so you're always on the lookout for them. Or the color yellow, or you know all the important sites from the Revolutionary War in the area. What is it for you? It doesn't matter what it is to me. I just hope that you know. Because when you know what you love and you let yourself love it, you can be on the lookout for joy all the time. The bad stuff in this world, as we have learned all too well, is contagious. But the good news is joy is too. Joy really is. And we all have the capacity to generate more of it, just by noticing and fully embracing the things that we love and the people that we love. Joy can make all of this more bearable. I wish I had better news this morning, but unfortunately the world is going to keep throwing bad things our way. We can work to change it, but it's going to take a while before all the bad is gone. We can't just keep wishing and hoping for that. But we can recognize that when we allow ourselves to be fueled authentically by joy, by what we love, we will end up looking around wanting more to make this world better. We will want to share the joy we found. No matter how terrible the headlines are, we do each have a source of joy that was given to us as we were born, just as we believe we have belovedness as our birthright as Unitarian Universalists. No one can take that away from us. And so I hope that we each have multiple sources of joy, right? Diversify your sources of joy. They say that in finance, right? Diversify your investments. You want some that are big and some that are small and some fast acting and some slower. So diversify your sources of joy. Have the big ones like friends, maybe family, the close relationships with people you love. But also let yourself find joy in small things, in dogs on the internet, in cozy hot beverages, your favorite TV show, birds in the sky. Whatever it is for you, just catalog that whole bunch of things that bring you joy for yourself. Make a list if you need to and tack it right by your front door. Do whatever you can in this challenging world to help you go out looking every day to receive your joy. Because the world needs you full and ready. It needs all of us. The Baptist minister and theologian Willie James Jennings said, "I look at joy as an act of resistance against despair." I look at joy as an act of resistance against despair. Joy powers our ability to engage with suffering rather than succumb to the temptation to ignore it or shut it out. It reminds us that there is always more than the suffering, and that even in those difficult places, there can be more joy again in that place. Just like the balance of winter to spring and rain to sun and nighttime to day, the challenges we face can shift their balance. And every little piece of joy that we cultivate and share helps. It all helps. May it be so, and amen.